Video is live. And I'll get it. No worries, man. I got it.
Okay.
Warning, John.
For the W Wisconsin Sports Podcast.
May, in fact, contain language that you do not wish for your children to hear.
Inappropriate content can lurk around any corner on this podcast, but what we do provide
is probably the best Packers, Bucks, Badgers, and Brewers content you could ever hope to hear. All the sports that you want and none of the ones that you don't.
The entire landscape of Wisconsin sports is covered here, including all of the biota there within.
The biota, the zeitgeist, all sorts of things like
words.
That. Yeah. And we
for
hope
the words.
For the W.
Thanks for listening.
For the W, spelled like words.
Oh, hey there, John.
Oh, yo, hey there, Nick.
And we are back, and we're doing it live.
One more time.
Yeah, well, the second time is always the best time, and we are for the first time recording video in addition to our audio, so we can look at you and we can say, welcome to For the W.
I'm an artist, Nick. I'm not going to break the fourth wall.
I'm really proud of you for that. You've always been true to your roots, and I have to give you all the credit in the world for that, John.
I appreciate it, and I'll take every single bit of credit in the world.
Yeah, well, yeah, we know that. We're all very well aware, and pleased to have you once again, sir. As always, as you and I do each and every week, whether or not you and I are dealing with protocols and have to do a podcast on a Wednesday, which is very unlike us.
Well, it is unlike us, Nick, but it is the podcast for the W, so I feel like a Wednesday release is something that our listeners can at least forgive on some sort of like a subconscious level.
And they've probably been expecting for a while that we'd be switching to Wednesday, so kind of we did them a favor.
I feel like we did Wednesdays at some point.
Yeah, when we started this podcast, we just kind of did it when we could.
Yeah, because we called it For the Wednesday.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. If you go back to some of our deleted episodes, maybe we talk about it. I can't promise you anything.
A weekday
Wisconsin sports podcast.
Weekday themed podcast is what it was our original idea.
Yeah, it was obviously what we wanted to do. But more than anything, I think what we wanted to do is provide the best coverage of Packers, Badgers, Bucks, and when seasonally appropriate, Brewers.
And Mingos and Warhawks and Golden Eagles. Big win by Marquette the other day.
Man, talk to me about it, because I've been following the Badger basketball men's team beating number 3 Purdue.
Well, Providence was 16th in the country, and Marquette beat them by 32. This is a direct shout out to Jim McIlvain,
our white whale.
Our white whale on this podcast, where we want to get you on. This is another open invitation. You just let us know. Cover some Marquette basketball. But until then, we're going to be covering the Badgers in the Bucky Bugle, the Packers in the Titletown Transmission, the Bucks in the Cream City Keys, the Brewers in the Sticky Stuff, or next year's
there may be a new intro.
Name. Yep. Well, but not a lot of room for Marquette right now. They're not as good as the Badgers.
Yeah, and we'll probably look at bringing Francisco back for Brewers content later on.
Yeah, soon. We got to get an update. I have no idea what the Brewers are doing.
There's some exciting stuff going on there. Not going to talk about it this week. This week's episode will go Bucks, Badgers, Packers, so stay tuned for that.
Well, let me ask you this. Is the lockout still occurring?
As of now, it appears that there will be a lockout, John. But
Giannis.
But why are you asking questions about things that we're not going to talk about?
I'm just saying, Giannis is an owner of the Milwaukee Brewers. He's got to get down at the labor relations table, hammer this thing home.
I don't know if Giannis has that clout yet.
What was he doing when he had COVID?
Or maybe he was working on this. I don't know. You're just throwing all sorts of stuff at me. We've got notes before the episode, and
none of this is
there. And I'm just like, where's all this coming from, John? We've already recorded once and messed that up, and now there's all this new stuff.
This is where it's coming from,
John
Nick.
Stradamus from the outer limits, I guess. And we talked about the idea of Jim McIlvain, the white whale, coming back. And, John, there's some other guests coming to the pod, and I think that's going to be our campfire this week. But before we go up there and tell you all about it, we have a couple other things to mention. if you'd like to listen to this podcast, and I would wonder about your intentions because you're listening right now.
Yeah, if you don't want to listen to this podcast, that's too bad. But also rate, review, subscribe. 5 stars is the only rating currently being accepted at this time.
And we could get into all the details, but I mean, it boils down to the supply chain. You and I have talked about
Supply chain.
Yeah, so
Supply chain.
possibly down the line, there may be another option other than a 5-star rating. We've yet to have that be open for anybody, and we've had people...
Well, you know about the supply chain.
Yeah, know how it works. It's complicated. Logistics.
I see it on the news.
Yeah, you hear about it. All of your favorite news personalities, and who doesn't have so many these days?
It's a Charlie Shortino world, and we're all just living in it.
Absolutely. And obviously, if you are enjoying the podcast, you can find all the places where we're located if you go to forthew.buzzsprout.com. From there, you will see that we are everywhere. We are also on all your social media. We now stream live to Facebook after we post the episode. You can hear that. We will be on YouTube, and John will not break the fourth wall.
I'm an
Only
artist.
I will.
I'm an artist.
And at this point in time, now that we've gotten all the disclaimers out of the way, let us go, John.
North.
Here
we are.
And up here, you and I can kind of sit back, relax. I can kind of talk about my week of protocols, and that leads us to some opportunities that you and I are getting into. Some various folks that are going to be collaborating with us. Not just Francisco anymore. Not just Sean Kelly, the Badger Maestro anymore.
Nick, new year, new me, new us, new for the we, Nick. Nick, I'm really glad that we are doing a podcast about a state that is so passionate and so devoted to its sports teams, assuming they win.
Absolutely.
A decent amount, assuming they're competitive. And Nick, like I've said before, an outcropping of what was once just us yelling in the wilderness to possibly ourselves, but mostly just to birds about Wisconsin sports is now starting to fall gently on the ears of actual humans in the state of Wisconsin or interested in the state of Wisconsin who are also interested in the Wisconsin sports landscape and total biota.
Yeah, and speaking of biota, if you listened a few weeks ago, and I think it was episode 95, you and I talk about our trials and tribulations of trying to promote the podcast through Twitter. No, not Twitter, Reddit. My apologies.
Reddit.
Because Twitter, we do it all the time.
Banging it out. We got like 40 followers.
Shamelessly. But we did run into a bit of a roadblock on this whole Reddit sphere. You jumped in. You were trying to do a good thing. You got shut down by one of the sheriffs of the internet, or as he referred to himself, a janitor of the internet.
Nick, have you ever heard the song Hey Jude?
I have no idea what you mean. What is that?
So the Beatles, they're a band from Britain.
The Beatles.
During the 60s that had a song called Hey Jude, and the lyrics to that song.
I thought it was Hey Dude.
Nope. The lyrics to Hey Jude
all right.
go, you take a sad song and make it better. Nick, what we did is we turned our setback into an opportunity through sheer good old-fashioned Wisconsin charm.
Once
Nick,
again.
And blissful ignorance. I had never been on Reddit before, and a user named Greek Alphabet Soup, the moderator of the Milwaukee Bucks community forum, ended up immediately deleting my promotional Reddit post that
it was great, by the way. Listen to episode 95 if you want to hear all about it.
Absolutely. But what we did was we invited Greek Alphabet Soup onto the podcast, something that we are hoping can occur in the very near future for some Bucks takes beyond just the you and me of it all. And Nick, he responded with some demands and some things that our legal department has to take a look at. But I think we're moving in that direction, and it would be really cool to have him on.
Yeah, it looks like we're going to probably have Greek Alphabet Soup on here. I do highly recommend that.
That's Nick Stradamus there, folks.
Yeah, go back, listen to episode 95, because what a silly, like, goofy interaction we had with this guy. And for some reason,
He's the best fucking moderator on Reddit.
he really is. And for some reason, he had the weird thought to, like, try to find our podcast and listen to it. Of course, loved it, just like all of you listeners and you and I.
Yeah, and in our Reddit bio, we do have a link to the podcast, so it wasn't that hard for him.
So he checked it out. He actually really enjoyed it, and he's going to be popping on at some point. So we've
Assuming our legal team allows it.
yeah, I mean, there's questions. I just want to put that out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so without any further magoo on Greek alphabet soup, I did have another interaction here, John. And as we've talked about, Vic Ketchman, formerly of AskVic.us, I reached out to Vic this week, basically because I was just sad that his column was gone, and ended up having a really nice conversation with Vic as well. No intention to come on the podcast.
No intention at all. Nick, I thought that was so cool when you were texting me about that. And Vic is somebody who started at Packers.com, you said in 2011. He's been at it for a decade. And that was just as the internet was kind of coming into its own. And here's this guy who's creating content and kind of now he's got it. Then he evolved into having his own website. And like you said, he is calling it a bit of a quits.
Yep.
As far as the column is concerned. And I know that you have a very, very personal relationship with the column. It's been a gateway to Packers fandom for you. And so that made me really excited to hear that you had reached out and that conversations were moving along. And I think you had mentioned a possible collaboration of some kind.
Yeah, so we are looking at a potential for the W, we'll say stewardship role for some of Vic's work.
Mm-hmm.
More on that to come in the following weeks.
Yeah, hammer out the details, you know.
I will tell you this. If you go to askvic.us, you will find a blank 404 error code. But if you do go to a website called the Wayback Machine and look it up, you can still access some of his content, and it's really good stuff. So I highly recommend checking it out. He also has his column up on Packers.com that's still in their archives. And he also spent some time with the Jaguars that's there, but just a super knowledgeable guy who's met every single legendary football player you can imagine.
Did he go down there with Aaron Campman?
No. But yeah, I think he came up here when Aaron Campman went down there. I think Campman sent him up
He
here.
just hates Campman, huh?
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, spent time with the Steelers in the 70s, spent time with the Jaguars up into the 90s. And really that's where he got his foothold on some of the internet aspects. And then Green Bay Packers came a-calling. And I still remember the first time I heard about him because I was not an avid reader of Packers.com even. I was on another forum and a Jaguars fan happened to come in and said, hey, you guys are getting this guy. You're going to love him. And he was dead on. But more than anything, it was, for me, I've written Vic's column so many times over the years.
He ever published you?
Never published. So it was a personal thrill to look at my phone and see Victor Ketchman come up in the calling in and to actually have a conversation with one of them. I don't want to say my heroes because I think that cheapens it, but just a great sports mind and a very well spoken person that happy to see where this goes. Another person that's looking to see where their future goes is Mr. Donte DiVincenzo, John.
Nick, here in the North Woods, surrounded by pines, blue spruce, Norway pines, white pines, Douglas firs, which are actually a type of pine, not a fir. One is reminded of many things. And something that I was recently reminded of as I was getting hype to really start banging on the drum of the Donte DiVincenzo bandwagon, the big Ragu wagon. All of a sudden, he goes down with an injury to the same foot that he injured last season in the playoffs that he had surgery on. Donte, get well soon, man. I love you. But, Nick, a few weeks back, I did put a take into the Dutch oven takes that we've done in this Campfire segment before. And after opening it up, and I did it off camera, opened it up. It's burnt. It's sour. It's bitter. There's at least 3 different types of fungi growing on it. A real outcropping, as some may say, of some real interesting forms of life, but not necessarily delectable ones. Nick, that take has gone bad. I put it in too soon. The take was that Donte would overtake Grayson Allen for the starting role and would be our starting shooting guard moving forward. This week with the addition of Pat Connaughton and Grayson Allen to the protocols list, including Donte DiVincenzo to the injured list, Nick, it's thrown our two-guard situation into total chaos. And so I think that it's time we open that take up, throw it away, and prepare the Dutch oven for the next take when we have something really great.
Wow. I mean, real words, wise words. I appreciate you sharing.
You're welcome.
That's a heralding journey. The crop outcropping, you said?
The mold.
There was crop dust.
There was no crop dust, Nick. There was no crop
It
dust.
smelled like someone crop dusted the area.
Well, that
catch
was
my drift, John.
Sounds like you crop dusted the area with all that drift talk. Nick, with all that being said, I think it's time we go to Milwaukee and talk about these Bucks. This episode, we're going Bucks, Badgers, Packers. Am I wrong?
You are correct, sir. I appreciate you checking with me to be sure that you were correct.
Nailed it.
We appreciate all of our bandwagon fans only giving us 5-star ratings because supply chain,
less than 5 stars can't, supply chain.
Well, let's do it. Let's hit up the Cream City, and we will see you all down there near the Deer District.
And like the 2021 Milwaukee Bucks, we persevered. We kept the defensive pressure high. We just played to our strengths. We listened to Coach Bud, and we fucking grinded it out, Nick.
Cream City. Drew Holiday has been excellent for our starting lineup.
He's a Giannis. He plays Giannis, and he's a Giannis. Their coach is still Mike Budenholzer, Nick.
Not surprised. Going into that last game in Game 6, I just felt deep within my soul, we've got this.
Now, Nick, you may say, was it really that lopsided? And Nick, I would say, fuck yeah, it was, man. The Bucks are champions of the fucking world.
Oh, yes, indeed. Welcome to another installment of the Cream City Keys, where we talk about all things Milwaukee Bucks, what is working, what is not. Currently, a lot of stuff working in spite of all the trials and tribulations that we just described as we speak, John. The Milwaukee Bucks are engaged in an actual basketball match. They're currently trailing the Raptors 24-20 in the first quarter, but they're still in the Cream City, and there's so much other stuff to be thankful for from these past couple weeks.
Nick, the Bucks are an interesting case in what the pressures of shortened rotations due to COVID and injury can really bring out of guys. And something that I have long held the belief of, and by long I mean literally like a year, because that's when we got him, is that this team, when we acquired Drew Holiday, I think that we very much became much more of a laid-back, nonplussed, kind of lackadaisical, a calm, focused energy that never got too high, too low, as opposed to a frenetic and kind of like hyper-energetic team when we, saw the absence and the departure of Eric Bledsoe, who has been balling out, by the way. Just beat the Nets by himself, basically. It's great to see. Love Bled. I love Bled. Regardless, the Bucks have now kind of taken on the persona of one Drew Holiday. And Drew Holiday is a dude who likes to have fun, likes to really enjoy himself, and likes to get better every day. And he's been balling out, but it does sometimes, he has a tendency to kind of like get a bit spacey. He would do that in the Nets series, he did it in the Phoenix series a bit, but when it really mattered, he came through. But I'm seeing that now in things like our loss yesterday, or on Monday to the Detroit Pistons, and that was at home. And now we're playing against the Toronto Raptors. I think that we're going to win this one because we're so damn good. But I'm just saying that Drew, there's a reason we got the 3 seed last year, and it's because Drew was very confident in our ability to win in the 16-game season that follows the 82 game or 70, whatever it was last year. And so I wonder how seriously the Bucks are taking everything right now.
I feel like they're taking it relatively seriously, and let me tell you why. So since we were last on the pod here, which would have been last week, Monday, December the 27th, since that time, the Bucks have gone 3 of 4. We've beaten some teams by pretty good margins. I mean, we beat the Magic twice. Tuesday, December 28th, 127-110. That's a victory. The following night, 136-118. Another victory. We invited the New Orleans Pelicans to come on up here from the Big Easy for a 113-136 beatdown, and that was on New Year's Day. And then finally, we invited the Detroit Pistons from the Motor City. Pretty terrible showing, and not our best, 115-106. That was a loss on Monday, January the 3rd. And it was a loss for us because that was when we were supposed to be doing this podcast, but I was still unwell. So apologize for all those things.
Protocols,
they occur.
Protocols. I was in the protocols, then you were in the protocols.
Aaron Rodgers even was in the protocols.
Aaron Rodgers was in the protocols.
And like every Bucks
Grayson,
player.
Pat are currently in the protocols. Donte, Chris, Giannis were all previously in the protocols. Drew was in the protocols at some point, Nick. Though I did see a video of Brook Lopez being in the practice facility for the Milwaukee Bucks.
And I think all that just to say overall that you and I aren't simply journalists, and I do stress the word, but we actually live and breathe just like the players that we cover each and every week.
Yeah, the same air.
Yeah. We're very serious about that.
Absolutely. We want to keep it a closed system between us and the players. We just breathe only the air that they've breathed as well.
Yeah, and don't ask us how we do that. But that is seriously proprietary information.
Nick, we are way off the rails.
Yes, get us back on track.
I said before the pod, we're going to do some damn vitals. We're going to take our vitamins today with our statistical breakdown. The Bucks.
Let's do it.
Of Milwaukee, the good land. Deer District shirt I got, Jay. Jeez, this is sweet, huh?
Merry Christmas to you, sir.
Thanks. My sister got me. This is badass.
2-time NBA champions.
Yep.
Home of the Milwaukee Bucks, the good land.
Yep. Deer District, Nike shirt, super sweet.
And just in that same vein, and because we have video now, I know you don't want to break the fourth wall, but to all you watching out there, I got this championship trophy replica up here from the in-laws of all people. And so you and I are really sporting it all as best we can.
Nick, stats.
Let's hear
the
it.
Milwaukee Bucks are 25-14, third in the Eastern Conference behind the first place Bulls and the second place Nets. The Bulls are a fun little frisky team.
Yes.
And Chicago's going crazy about it. Our last game, like I said, we lost to the Detroit Pistons. We are still coached by the one and only Mr. Bood, Mike Budenholzer. John Horst is still our executive du jour. We are fourth in the association in points per game now, all the way up to fourth at 112.1. Opponent points per game, 107.8, which is all the way down to 17th. But that's why we look at the advanced stats. The offensive rating, 112.5 out of 100 possessions. That's fourth in the NBA. Defensive rating, 108.2, which is 10th. So top 10 in both offensive and defensive rating categories. Our net rating is plus 4.3, which gives us the fifth best net rating in the association. And Nick, we have missed 12 games from Chris or something like that. We've missed like 10 games from Giannis. We've missed the entire season almost from Brook Lopez. We've missed multiple games from Bobby Portis. We're about to absorb some lost time from Pat Connaughton, Grayson Allen. Donte's only played 2 games. And yet, Nick, we just keep hanging around. We're only a game and a half out of first, or 2 games out of first.
2 games, yep.
And, Nick, these other teams are fucking up, man. They should be putting distance between themselves and us because the truth is Giannis, Chris, and Drew have only lost 3 times in the last, 6 months when they're both healthy. And one of those, Chris hurt his knee early in the second half, and the other one was yesterday against Detroit, which I'm just classifying as whatever. So, Nick, this is a threesome that cannot be stopped. what so far since its inception last season. That unit of Giannis, Chris, and Drew has been borderline unstoppable. And Nick, it looks to still be that way. Like I said earlier, Drew's been balling out. Giannis has been Giannis. He had 10 assists for 10 threes the other day. I mean, it's just like the chemistry between those three guys and therefore the auxiliary players around them. Bobby Portis is having a career season. I mean, it's just all good things when you look at the fundamentals of this team. And like I said, these other teams that are not taking advantage of the banging and the grind that this team is going through after coming off the longest run in the playoffs, obviously, and then going over to the Olympics. The fact that these teams aren't taking advantage of that, you're going to come to regret that, I believe.
Well, I do want to point out the obvious. As much as the Bucks are dealing with injuries and COVID and all these things, other teams are dealing with those same struggles. So I will say this. It's going to heat up as this year goes on, and especially the number of players that we've seen come down with the COVID protocols from a variety of teams. I think this season is only going to get better, and we're going to see a lot more as we go down the line here. And we got some good opponents coming up. We are playing the Nets the end of this week. Just a few weeks, you and I are actually going to be attending a game on the 28th, I believe it is. The New York Knicks are coming to town.
Thank you.
Yeah, so yeah, my wife hooked me up with some Bucks tickets, and she said, please don't take me. So more to come on that, John. You and I will talk about that offline. But let's get back to what's going on right now and kind of fill us in on where we are standing, because the standings aren't showing a lot of movement. But what's going on?
So in the NBA right now, we are kind of getting to, I always say that Christmas is the unofficial start of the NBA calendar, because that's when things really take off. We have played 0 combined games against the Lakers, the Bulls, the Warriors, and the Suns thus far this season. We have only played 1 game against the Nets. We've got 10 out of our next 25, I believe. I'd have to check that stat exactly, but either way, we've got 10 games coming up in the next month and a half or so against those opponents, and I'm really excited to see. I've been talking all season about Bucks Warriors, but Bucks Nets is coming up this Friday, and that's I think where we're gonna land the segment. But the Lakers games, the Bulls games, I've always gone to the Bulls games in Chicago for the Bucks because the Bulls were so bad that it was cheap. I'm hoping that my friends that bring me to those games are able to afford it, because that would be dope. Because those Bulls are fun, and like I said, number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, and the Suns, the finals rematch. Very excited for that. That's coming up in Phoenix, February 10th. And Nick, with all that being said, what I really think this time of the year is for the Milwaukee Bucks is to start building on what is already becoming a blooming partnership between Giannis, Chris, and Drew. I'm really excited for all-star voting to occur in the near future, because all 3 of those guys deserve to be on that team. All 3 of those guys are NBA champions. Chris didn't make the all-star game last year, and some Celtic made it. I think both Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and even if it was just one of them, didn't deserve to make it over Chris. Domantas Sabonis made it over Chris. This is starting to get ridiculous. In my day, Nick, whether it's the Boston Celtics Big 3, whether it's the Golden State Warriors Big 3 and then Big 4, the Cleveland Cavaliers Big 3, the Miami Heat Big 3, when you have a Big 3, all 3 go to the All-Star game when they average 20 points, 5-6 rebounds, 5-6 assists, all of them. There's no other team in the NBA that has 3 guys that are averaging 5 assists other than the Milwaukee Bucks. This is a team that does it by equal opportunity, and if these all-star voting body members don't understand that, Nick, I'm going to be pretty pissed.
And unlike the Pro Bowl in the NFL, the All-Star game in basketball in the NBA still is good. So hopefully we'll see that.
Especially since they started making it competitive and like having the guys vote on their teams. Giannis didn't miss a shot in the NBA All-Star game last year, and was the NBA's All-Star MVP before he won Finals MVP. Let's see if he comes back defending the crown a bit.
Yeah, I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see what the Steven Crowell of the Bucks does for the Bucks this year. Of course, that's Giannis. And
it's just absurd. Anyway.
Yeah, what else do you have to tell us? Because we got lots of Badgers to talk about. We got lots of Packers.
Well, as I say on the group thread a lot, let me know when those two win a ring, and we'll talk about them for more time than the Bucks. But I do want to just bring up, we are playing the Brooklyn Nets. The first time we've played them since the very first game of the season, smoked them by like 25. That was with a healthy Brook. Brook was very instrumental in sealing the rim against the Nets in the playoffs. It's going to be very interesting without PJ Tucker and now without Pat and Grayson. Where is everybody going to be guarded? Now, we will be playing in Brooklyn, which means Kyrie Irving will not be playing. But regardless of anything else for both of these two teams, they both know they're the best two teams in basketball, and it's not particularly close. Now, the Warriors and the Suns may have some claim to that, but until further notice, as I said last year during the playoffs, that was the NBA Finals in the second round. I believe that to be the case again this season, and so every game with those two teams pitted up against each other, must-watch TV.
Awesome. Happy to hear it. And if you're watching right now, the Bucks did get the lead at the end of the first quarter. They are up 35-41, hosting the Toronto Raptors.
They're so good.
That's all good stuff, man. As long as our big three is there, I think we can do just about anything.
Oh, shout out Luke Cornett.
Yeah.
I just want to shout out Luke Cornett.
Yes. So, as we talked about earlier in the episode, and we really buried the lead on this one, John's been getting super in to all of the latest Bucks Reddit stuff.
My wife looked at me and said, "Are you like on Reddit now?" And I was like, well, the podcast is on Reddit now.
So yeah, if you would like to check out our Reddit, and you and I have been extremely more active there, but as I've been watching my phone and little Gmail messages, someone responded to your comment on Milwaukee Bucks. So check us out. We're on there as For the W Podcast, and we're interacting and having a blast doing it.
Absolutely.
Gonna keep doing that.
Recent questions include, what is a good nickname for Luke Cornett, and Giannis versus a Velociraptor of Jurassic Park vintage, 1-on-1, who wins and by how much? And I said Giannis wins 21-0 if it's win or take it, but I think it's a competitive 21-0.
So yeah, it's been a good time. We'll catch you guys there.
Where?
On Reddit. And until we get there, what do you say we head on over and see what's going on in the Camp Randall Kohl Center type area?
Absolutely.
All right, more sleuthin'
and truthin'.
The Bucky Bugle, the school newspaper of For the W.
The Bucky Bugle, the first unadmitted Wisconsin student newspaper of note.
Well, one day, we decided it was time to get deep undercover for some Wisconsin college sleuthin' and truthin'.
Wait, are those Brad Davidson's footprints on that pair of testicles?
Sounds like Brad Davison is afoot.
Wait, is that Greg Gard in this rural, small Minnesota town?
A recruiting hotbed.
Wait, is that Shaka Smart leering down from the Fiserv Forum rafters?
I see he's back on this side of the Mississippi.
College basketball coverage on For the W, a Wisconsin sports podcast brought to you by the Bucky Bugle.
Yes, and as we discuss at the intro to this, we do begin by talking about basketball with our new intro, but this week we're going to start with football, John.
Nick, the UW football Badgers did in fact play their bowl game, which I was dubious would occur due to the outbreak of the Omicron variant.
You know, and some teams really got kind of screwed on that whole bowl game thing. The Las Vegas Bowl that we played in was not one of those. And in fact, I found this to be a pretty competitive and fun to watch game.
Too late, obviously.
It was really late.
Yeah, really late. It was like 9 p.m. start time.
I was really sick anyway, so I had a weird sleep schedule. I got to catch everything from highlights to going back, and as I was laying in bed, I saw the highlights, went back and watched on my DVR. And man, I got to tell you though, the Arizona State Sun Devils, we knew they had a good defense. That I was excited to see their defense, but I do want to talk about their quarterback, Jaden Daniels. Fun to watch, and I would say everything that happened in this game the Badgers did a really nice job shutting him down because to me, he looked like a playmaker. He extended plays, maybe not the best arm that I've ever seen, but definitely a extremely serviceable quarterback that extended plays and extended drives.
Did he remind you of Jake the Snake Plummer?
He did not. No. No.
That's what I hold as the gold standard for all Arizona Sun Devils.
Yeah, and then Jake the Snake went on to play for the Cardinals in the NFL.
Got us to the playoffs that one year.
Yeah, that's right.
With the touchdown in the end zone against Minnesota.
Yeah, that was
week 17.
Beautiful. I love that's a great throwback, man. And then I believe the receiver that caught that ball, I don't remember who it was offhand. We ended up giving him the key to the city in Green Bay.
Yeah,
and I think if I remember
he
correctly,
earned it.
Yeah, if memory serves me correctly, we also blew out the Denver Broncos that day. I think Amon Green had like a really nice rushing game that day as well.
That sounds accurate. But again, it's very, very hazy.
Yeah, super hazy.
Super hazy. All I remember was that touchdown.
Yes. And
Jake the Snake, baby.
Yeah, Jake the Snake.
He went on to play for the Broncos. Too much Jake the Snake content. Anyway.
How did we get here? You know who else went to the Broncos is Brian. Talk about him on the podcast, Greasy. Spent some great years there. Anyway, that's a whole other story. I do want to jump from talking about their quarterback to talking about our quarterback. Graham Mertz looked like he was actually a decent quarterback in this game.
Yeah.
Now, he threw a pick, but 11 of 15.
Always.
That was great. It was great to see a healthy Braylon Allen and see what he's made of again.
He's such a monster. He's only 17. I mean, he's a monster.
That's like a rock song. There's like a ballad, but she's only 17. But I think they got it confused, and they actually meant he's only 17, and it was about Braylon Allen.
Yeah, and about how awesome he'd be at football at the University of Wisconsin.
Yeah, so tell us about that on Reddit, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. But anyway.
I have to say, watching this game, though, and watching just what an explosive player that Jaden Daniels is, a football player making football plays.
We love football players making football plays on this podcast.
And more than anything, though, watching that guy play and to see what kind of talent and skill set that he had, and then just to see the way that our defense responded to that challenge. We had a bunch of sacks, applied a lot of pressure. Now, he's a slippery runner. He got away from a lot of our pressures. But
kind of like Jake the Snake. Yeah. Jaden the Snake.
Jade the Snake.
Jade the Snade.
But I will say this. He couldn't get away from everything.
Is he related to Owen Daniels?
Don't think so. I don't think so.
Okay.
If they are related, it's distant. But
tell us about it at Reddit or whatever.
Yeah, tell us about it at Reddit. That's where you tell us about things now. It's no longer podcast for the w@gmail.com. But I do want to talk about watching our defense fly to the ball during this game. And we saw the usual suspects having making
Leo.
Football plays. Yeah, of course, Leo Chanel, just excellent game again. And then, of course, Jack Sanborn on a bunch of those. What a fun game. Nick Herbig came out and had the biggest game of all of our defenders this one, so that was cool too. But overall, man, I was just happy that we got the W. That's why we do all of this, and UW pulled out the W, rightfully so.
Well, this year there was a lot of conversation about people opting out of playing in the bowl games for their respective teams, whether it was, in the Ohio State, team, or there are various throughout the country. And Kirk Herbstreit caught some flack for saying that they don't care about football. Desmond Howard definitely was not, did not hold back on his belief that was not the best move. But I kind of actually have a little bit of a different take on it. And I think something I haven't heard kind of expressed that is a very real side to this. When I think about these guys who are opting out and what kind of position that puts their team in, it's kind of, if you're not playing for the national championship, I think that bowl games are always a very exciting time to honor the seniors who do not have hopes and dreams for the NFL. And also to understand who the underclassmen bubbling up for next year are. And I think that something that hasn't really been talked about a lot, that if I was in that locker room and a guy who was going to the NFL came to me and said he doesn't want to play, but it opens up an opportunity for a younger guy to get some snaps, or a fifth-year senior who doesn't start to get some snaps, or, you know, the manager gets to suit up for the team or something.
Rudy comes in.
It's a bowl game. It's meaningless. It's meaningless to the record of the team, but it can be a really great experience for everybody involved that wants to be involved. And if you don't want to be involved, who gives a shit? Like, I guess personally, it's like if their teammates are saying that that's some weak ass shit that you're sitting this out, we really want to go get it, I could kind of understand that. And like I said, in the college football playoff, if you're on my team and you're not going to show up for the playoffs, I don't know why the fuck you were here to begin with. But if it's just the bowl games are such a great opportunity for young underclassmen and for fifth-year seniors who may not get a lot of playing time to get on the field, I think that guys opting out because they're going to the NFL draft, it just amplifies that. And I think that a lot of people were in this camp or that camp. I mean, like I said, if I was on a team that the guy opted out and I wasn't happy with that, that's one thing. I didn't hear a lot of that. Maybe it occurred, but I didn't hear it. But I just think bowl games are fun. And the Las Vegas Bowl was fun. And it's fun to see guys that we don't see all the time making plays. And it's fun to see guys that maybe this is our last opportunity to see them out there making plays. It was a lot of fun to watch. Arizona State, their defense was good as advertised. Badgers, physically dominant as advertised, is a good matchup. And more power to everybody who showed up.
And John, as you give us healthy reminders of why we have the disclaimer at the beginning of the podcast, it's also worth noting that this doesn't necessarily help these guys in their pro careers. Part of what gets a guy an early draft status does come around, what do they do in the big games? So maybe this isn't necessarily going to impress a pro scout that, oh, you kept your ACL intact, but you didn't play in the big game.
Yeah.
So that's also another place where we've seen players that maybe our third rounders really shine and become a first round prospect. So I'm not sure it helps the players in the way that they think it does. And I agree, though. Hopefully this continues to open opportunities for guys that really want it. And, NCAA football, and not just football, but there's a lot of things that are wrong with the NCAA organization at this time.
At every time.
Yeah. And so at this point, maybe this just provides some more feedback for how they can improve the product there.
Whatever. They're not going to be the ones to solve it. I mean, I think with the conglomerations of all these conferences, I think that the NCAA is in a really transient period. But to your point, I think that the combinization of the NFL draft process, the ability for a guy to shoot up the draft leaderboards through sheer athletic ability in a combine sterile setting. I think the NFL loves having the combine, loves televising the combine, loves talking about the combine. I think there are certain teams that really value combine measurables, but like you said, I don't think anybody's helping their draft stock by not playing. And I don't think anybody's hurting their draft stock by not playing.
I mean, it's at least not doing what they think it will.
Yeah.
Overall.
It does lower the variance though, because if you have a bad combine now, you may screw yourself. It kind of sucks. And as somebody who's worked as an agent before, not a sports agent, but you want to always put your clients in the best position to succeed in a sustainable way. And taking risks like that, I would be suspicious of an agent who told me not to play in a bowl game. I would be suspicious of that guy. Just personally.
And when you're in a situation where you have an opportunity to showcase your talent, now yours is more in a casting type of situation, but the NFL and the NCAA, this is a casting call. If you ask me, this is a chance to show what you can put on the screen there for these NFL scouts, and
more of a cattle call, really.
Yeah, cattle call. But the cattle call is the combine.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean.
But they're not getting that benefit, and who knows? I think it all comes out in the wash.
Yeah.
But John, if you have nothing else to add on the NCAA Badgers football team, I'd like to get to talking about the men's basketball team because we've had some excitement there as well.
Well, Nick, I think it's about time we send them off in our normal style, Nick.
As we go on,
we remember
all the times we
spent together
I don't remember what comes after that, but we will still be
friends forever.
All right, and we can change, and we're here in our mold. And moving right along to the Wisconsin Badgers basketball team, they are also here in their mold. It's a mold we've seen before. It's a mold we've hoped would break, and the mold has not broken. And frankly, John, that may not be such a bad thing because
strong mold.
It's a good mold. I got to tell you, this mold, it's just like the Dutch oven. There's a lot of mold going on in this episode. There's some mold and oldies here. And I do want to talk about this because
some moldies.
Some moldies. Yeah. That might be the For the W podcast awards show.
No.
But let's talk
the
about
Dubbies.
The Dubbies. For the V. But let's talk about God, we're getting so off base here. I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm sending you full flipper again.
Where are we?
Back to this game that we saw here on Monday, January the 3rd, an evening where you and I were supposed to be doing the podcast. I was dead to the world, but it's given us the opportunity that here on another W, Wednesday, we can talk about UW, those Badgers, and their victory over the Purdue Boilermakers, a team which was ranked 3rd overall in the nation.
Nick, something I've talked about on this podcast before. I have many in-laws who are Purdue alums. Nick, you yourself are an Indianan by birth.
No, not by birth, but I did live there for a good period of time.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought it was by birth.
No, never was born there. I tried.
Were you reborn there? Why am I thinking you were anyway?
I lived a good portion of my life in Indiana. My mother's family is all from there. Still have a lot of family in Indiana, and still a place that I love to call a giant cornfield that I'd love to visit. Sometime.
I bought my car in Indiana because of the sales tax.
Then they say there's more than corn in Indiana, and on this particular night, there was certainly more than corn there.
I was screwed, though, because Chicago catches you on that sales tax and makes you pay theirs as well.
Well, that's why I don't live in Chicago, John. But another reason why I don't live in Chicago is because the Badgers aren't there, and they don't have Johnny Davis, and Johnny Davis was he was the X factor in this game. 37 points, almost like... Well, let me see here. He had exactly half of our team's points in this game.
Nick.
So if Johnny Davis doesn't play, this is 37-69.
Well, and what did I say a few weeks back when we talked? He reminds me of Devin Booker.
Yeah, you did say that he had some Devin Booker similarities. I was talking about another Devin Harris, but that was because I had my red Badger glasses on. But I think you and I can both agree that Johnny Davis is making a name, and talking about guys showcasing their talents on a national stage. He's really helping his draft stock. They're blowing up talking about him nationally right now.
Oh yeah, he's going to be a top 10 draft pick maybe. I mean, his scoring ability off the dribble, and his shot creation for himself and sometimes others. If you're going to be the number one guy, I'd like to see his assists. But again, that's not the offense that we run. You know, I mean, the swing offense just doesn't, get a lot of assists for their guards. But I just think that that's the next level to his game. But he is so elite at scoring, which is the most important thing in basketball. As the great Bill Russell once said to Kyrie Irving on a Uncle Drew Pepsi commercial, the game is and always has been about buckets. And Johnny Davis gets them in bucket loads.
And not only that, but as much as he makes the buckets that he attempts, he also gives us a lot of opportunities. Another game where he has double-digit rebounds, led our team 14 rebounds, and let me tell you, nobody else was even close on the team. So he's given himself extra opportunities. He's given the guys around him extra opportunities. Even our Giannis, Steven Crowell, is nowhere close to him statistically.
It's not our Giannis. It's not a thing.
And not only that, and obviously that's tongue-in-cheek. If you really think that I believe Steven Crowell is...
You do, Nick. I know some deep, dark ravine in your subconscious believes it.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe. I have no idea.
You're a Crowell head.
Either way, we're, when I'm talking about Crowley.
You're a Mr. Crowley.
But let's get back to this game here. As much as I love talking about Steven Crowell.
And Ozzy Osbourne.
Yeah, Ozzy always comes into play. Does he? I don't know. Brad Davison
he does.
Brad Davison had the second highest scoring for this team. But something else I wanted to talk about, and you and I talked about this a little before the pod. I do want to make mention of Chucky Hepburn, the freshman guard here, because you and I expected a lot out of this guy. And if you look at the stat lines, people are probably thinking, man, he's just not really that good. He's not really performing. He's one of our 5 Tigers. Do you want to start by saying that?
5 Tigers, for reference, is
the 5 starters, but that's also a reference to an old Chinese story, I guess. I don't know.
Video game?
Semi-autobiographical. A lot of video games came out of it. But more or less the book Romance of the Three Kingdoms. The 5 Tigers were the 5 generals of the Shu army, known for being indispensable on the battlefield. In the video game Destiny of an Emperor, they were the only ones that could actually have their hit points increase when they leveled up. That's a whole other story here, but I do want to go back to Chucky Hepburn. And while he's not the guy that's going to be out there and getting the most offense, I have to say he's one of the best on-ball defensive guards I've watched this year in college basketball.
He's a beast.
He plays so close to the offensive player. He's always right in his hip pocket. He's getting steals, getting turnovers. He's a true Badgers guard, and I do hope that as Johnny Davis potentially could be looking at moving on after this season with a lot of opportunities in the NBA already, that we're going to see a bigger role for Chucky Hepburn. And if his scoring can kind of catch up to what he can do defensively, I know it's not as flashy, but he adds a really nice element to our defense right now.
Well, the other thing, too, with him that has been on full display as he's kind of really assumed a more prominent role with this team is that his turnovers are way down. In this game, I mean, we talk about it all the time with this team because it's what we need to do to win. Our turnover percentage was only 9.3, much better than Purdue's turnover percentage in this one of 15.3. When we win that matchup and we win the effective field goal percentage matchup, we're really hard to beat. And again, Chucky Hepburn being able to be out there for 32 minutes and only have the 1 turnover, and to offset that with steals are so important, especially on ball, pick your pocket steals, almost always result in a basket. And his steal at the end of the first half in this one on the road in Mackey Arena, where the Badgers have won like 5 times in the last 150 years, really was a momentum solidifier and changer for this Badger team. And another guy I'd like to shout out, somebody we talked about a few weeks ago, Chris Voight. Is it Voight? Vote?
Yeah.
Somebody we talked about before the season as a senior who could come in and provide some leadership to that front court of very talented but very young guys, not as physical of a front court as a normal Badger squad will have when Stephen Crowell and Tyler Wall are out there. All that changes when Chris Vogt comes in. He is big, strong, and against a Purdue team that has such a dominant front court, was able to absorb, I think he had like 3 fouls or 4 fouls in his like 15 minutes or whatever, but he was able to hold the line when Crowell was out, Tyler Wall was out. All of them fouled out, actually. Chris Vogt, Stephen Crowell, and Tyler Wall all fouled out of this one. And it's those minutes that he's able to absorb, the 13 minutes. He went 2 for 3 from the floor and had 2 free throws, also created some contact. That's the veteran presence. That's that senior presence that he provides that our other guys don't. And it's a reason that we were able to hold our own and win this game. It allowed Johnny Davis to win the game for us. That's what the rest of these Badgers need to be thinking about is, what can I do other than score the ball to make sure that every other aspect of the game is closed up? Because Johnny Davis is such a special talent. He's going to be averaging like 20 shots a game from now on.
Don't ask what Johnny Davis can do for you. Ask what you can do for Johnny Davis.
That goes to Brad Davison, Chucky Hepburn, Stephen Crowell, Tyler Wall, Carter Gilmore, Chris Voight, Jordan Davis, his own brother. I mean, it's just, that's exactly the question they need to be asking, Nick.
Well, and the real question is how far does this Wisconsin Badgers team go in this Big Ten Conference? So right now, Badgers on a 3-game win streak. We're 2-1 in conference play. That gives us the number 4 overall behind a lot of the usual suspects that we've seen time and time again. Michigan State currently leading. They've lost 2 games just like we have, but they're undefeated in the Big Ten. Ohio State, very similar situation. In Illinois, those are the 3 teams ahead of us here. Now, having beat Purdue, and Purdue's highly touted, handing them only their 2nd loss, but they've dropped to, 6th or 7th in the standings now. And as we look at that, I do want to make mention of the fact some of the guys that you just named. We have our 5 guys that we know are starters, but we also had an opportunity within a big game that we've gotten the ability to see what do these other guys offer the team and where can they come in and play some spot minutes for us. And I think it looks to me like we have a really nice cast surrounding our true star in Johnny Davis.
I mean, he's a superstar. He is a superstar, and he's going to be an NBA superstar if he doesn't get hurt and he keeps progressing at this level, because the ability he has to create his own shot and the size he has, the skill he has with the ball. I mean, that, like I said, he reminds me of Devin Booker, and not Devin Booker in college. He reminds me of Devin Booker, like right now.
And, not only that, but to overcome adversity, this is a Badgers team that had, 29 points in the first half. Now, early on, Johnny Davis had some terrible shots, just some bricks, but he just kept at it, kept it moving. And, second half, we had 45 points. They also had 45 points. The second half was a lot of scoring, especially for a Big Ten college matchup. And, man, we have with Johnny Davis the ability to score. Now, most years, this is a guy who our best guy averages 18 or something, and maybe this final score is 59 to 69 or 65 to 69, something like that. But Johnny Davis gives us an X factor that we've not traditionally had in Wisconsin.
Well, we've got some really exciting games coming up for this team too.
Yes.
So the next game we have is tomorrow, January 6th, against the Iowa Hawkeyes. Nick, always a fierce rival of the Badgers in all sports. But Nick, it's going to be a real fun matchup. For the first time this season, we get to see Johnny Davis, our superstar wing, against Keegan Murray, the superstar wing for the Iowa Hawkeyes, averaging 24.5 points, 8.2 rebounds. But he's even more than Johnny, a score-only threat, only 1.4 assists. When your best player only averages 1.4 assists and he's scoring 24.5, that means he's not passing the ball not nearly often enough. Let's hope we can maybe take advantage of that. And then after that, on Sunday, we go to Maryland, the Terrapins. This is when I start to kind of understand why we let Maryland into the Big Ten, is when basketball season rolls around.
Yeah, because you forget completely during football season.
Yeah, what the fuck are they doing here? But 8-5 this year, 0-2 in the Big Ten. Just not a lot going on. Eric Ayala is their leading scorer at 15.2 points a game. Big recruit back in 2018. Well, he's a senior now and leading 8-5 squad. Now that's a trap game though. That's the thing with this Badgers team. Every game matters because we do not have enough talent to take time off. We're going to get beat by some bad teams and we're going to beat some really good teams this year.
I don't necessarily know that we're going to get beat by some bad teams. You look at this game last week, Illinois State, a game that was much closer than it should have been. I think this is a team that can still, as you may say in an intro somewhere, be grinding it out,
Nick.
But yeah, I think to your point, the floor on this team is somewhat high at times, but yeah, a lot of teams have the ability to beat us because we still have that wonderful rural Minnesota recruiting going into the makeup of this team.
Well, the other thing too, Nick, is that our following game after that, which we will have another podcast between then and now. So we play Iowa on Thursday, Maryland on Sunday. We then have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday off before Ohio State comes to our house this time. And we get to show them what the Grateful Red is really all about. And we get to avenge our previous loss, our worst loss of the season this year. Nick, this Badger team is now 11-2. We were ranked 23rd in the country going into that last week. Let's see we are now 23rd. We were 24th last week, now 23rd. in the Associated Press poll. Let's see if we can continue to build our resume. We've had a really, really good start to the season, far better than I could have possibly expected. Let's hope it keeps going. I did text you earlier this week. Every time I want to give up on Greg Gard, he goes full Dick Bennett on me. Whether it was the Nigel Hayes and Bronson Koenig Sweet 16 run, or now this year with this team really getting the best out of everybody, or even a couple years ago when we started off so sluggish and then Mike Potter came on and got us back. Nick, Greg Gard's going to be here for a while, man. G squared.
Yeah, as much as my past self is disappointed to hear that, my future self is somewhat optimistic. Would still always like.
If we got Johnny Davis, we're good.
I've always been hoping for a premier coach to get in here, but let's see what we can do with Greg Gard. Maybe Bo Ryan was right. Maybe he was here for a reason, and maybe that reason wasn't obvious at the time, but certainly it's been paying dividends for us lately.
That is one last quick thing we should talk about before we move on. Real quick, my dad brought this up at New Year's. Jim Leonard, Paul Chryst. This offseason, do we think that Jim Leonard becomes the head coach? And B, is it possible that Jim Leonard and Paul Chryst could switch so that Jim Leonard is the head coach and Paul Chryst is the offensive coordinator?
Is that even precedented that we've seen a coach swap like that?
I don't know.
Because here's the way I look at this situation. Now, in Green Bay, and we're going to talk about their coach in this week's episode here in just a few minutes.
He's a beast.
We had a guy for a number of years who was really good, really reliable, previously coached for us as a quarterbacks coach, had a lot of ties to the team, came in, was very successful for quite a few years in Mike McCarthy. And it just got to this point where it started to feel a little stale.
Yep.
And now we brought in a younger guy, Matt LaFleur, a little bit different background as it relates to the Packers, comparing him to Jim Leonard and the Badgers, who he has plenty of history. Looking at this, though, I almost wonder if it might be time to look at something similar. Now, I think Chris is a good coach. I think Chris is a reliable coach, a steady coach. He's not a guy that gets too high or gets too low. But, man, looking at what Jim Leonard is doing as a revolutionary of defensive scheming and defensive philosophy.
He just gets it, man. He's a savant.
And I guarantee you he knows some guys that could probably pull some pretty creative stuff out of an offense as well. So as much as I love the idea of, like, maybe they would swap, I don't know if
my dad brought it up, and I was like, Dad, I think you're being too nice.
Well, who knows? I mean, I hope P. Briddy is correct in this case.
It would be nice for Paul Chryst to stick around, but Jim Leonard's got to be the head coach, I think.
I sure hope so.
And like now.
And now, I mean, Chris McIntosh was out with COVID too. He got a good look at this game. Like,
he's gonna have a real chance to reflect and think and let the fever dreams work their magic and bring new mindsets, new beginnings forward from the 100 and some degree temperature of his body.
Hopefully he talked to Vic Ketchman as well. Vic would have definitely given him some perspective, and perspective is something we're big about on this podcast.
Yep.
And I think we need to shift our perspective from one that's related to more of the amateur collegiate ranks to the pro ranks.
Semi-professional now, right?
The Badgers?
Aren't they? What's the Graham Mertz logo 5 on it thing?
I don't know. That brings up a whole host of questions.
Next season.
We'll talk about it next week.
No, next season.
Let's go. Let's head up. Let's go through Rosendale. Hopefully we don't get pulled over.
We're going to get pulled over.
All right. We're for sure going to get pulled over.
Highway 26 is a motherfucker.
All right. Yeah, we got to be ready for that. We'll see you at Lambeau.
You're now listening to Titletown Transmission, the unauthorized and underground radio of the Green Bay Packers.
For the W presents the story of a team that grew out of a small port town.
80,000 tailgaters every Sunday.
Statues of legendary coaches, Vince Lombardi and Curly Lambeau, welcome those fans.
Owned by the citizens of every county in the state of Wisconsin.
A-Rod.
A.J. Dillon.
The Bad Man.
Aaron Jones.
Aaron Rodgers.
Patrick Taylor.
All my people were the same people.
Nick, they sure were, and I already know where this segment's heading. The place I never want it to go, but it always has to fucking go. Go ahead.
Where's that? Aaron Rodgers, sir. So here's what I want to talk about, because we have a lot going on this week.
We do, and yet Aaron Rodgers is here.
Yes.
At the top of the segment.
Well, and just to be clear, this past week, you and I saw exactly what we want to see out of this team. We saw a Minnesota Vikings team that was really shorthanded, came to Lambeau, was ready to play, really made it interesting for about 8 minutes of game time.
Did they?
And then after that, we just kept running the ball. We really ground them down in this one, and that was great. But the questions are coming up about this Aaron Rodgers fellow. Now, it looks to me, and from all indications and from a variety of different sources, that Aaron is probably primed to be, if not the MVP, at the very least a front runner. And John, as much as I like to keep perspective, there's all sorts of stuff going on this week in regards to Aaron Rodgers. There's people that are upset at him. Aaron is talking shit again.
Yeah, what was the reporter's name who said he would not be voting for Aaron Rodgers?
So let me set the stage.
Please.
There's a certain number of individuals, and they are sports writers traditionally, that have the ability to vote on different things like the MVP and like the AP,
the Pro Bowl, which they fucked up.
Fans can vote on that too.
I'm so grumpy in the Packers segment.
What just happened to you, man? Like you'll talk about the Bucks, like Donte's injured, but we're gonna be fine, and then you're like, stupid Packers. I hate the team that's doing the best. You're like the Scrooge of the transmission.
True. It's so true.
But I'm like the Scrooge of the Bucks segment, so maybe there's something to it.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah, we saw some interesting stuff going on this week, and more than anything, Aaron kind of called this out on the Pat McAfee show, because Pat had said, as every week, when you watch the Pat McAfee program, and I'm sure that if you're,
I don't.
Do you watch even clips?
I did during the whole COVID thing. That's it.
Okay, so Pat McAfee is taking the sports world by storm. Just signed a major contract.
I saw.
He's got so many people that listen to him each week.
I'm sure he does.
For better or worse.
Not as many as listen to this podcast, of course.
For better or worse, Pat McAfee gets Aaron Rodgers every week for like a 45-minute sit down. And as this was going on, Aaron kind of called out the fact that, because McAfee was basically kissing his ass, and McAfee loves to kiss Aaron's ass.
Loves it.
Yeah, he's all about Aaron. He's right up in there.
Well, that's the golden goose.
Well, exactly. Yeah, he's putting on lip gloss. He's ready to go when Aaron comes on.
Yeah, I guarantee you that contract that Pat McAfee signs has an Aaron Rodgers clause in it.
Who knows? That's a good question. Maybe we'll have him on and he'll talk about it.
Yeah, Pat, come on the one podcast that's a bit more popular than yours, right here at For the W.
Yeah, we're the one. It's us.
Obviously, Aaron Rodgers' favorite podcast. At Pat McAfee, you could come on ours too.
But so as McAfee is telling Aaron, you're a shoo-in. You're for sure going to win this MVP award. And Aaron brought something up, and he said, I'm not so sure. A lot of people are still upset with me. I talked about a few weeks ago how I went full circle on Aaron. I went from it's almost like going through like a 12-step program. There's denial, and then you're bargaining. And, by the end of it, though, I went full circle from like all these emotions of Aaron to just like, God, that guy's a dick and I love him. And he kind of called this out because a couple of days, well, I guess it was the same day. It was on Tuesday. A sports writer by the name of Hub Arkush, who's from Chicago, I should add, so probably a Bears fan. Have you heard of this guy before this week? No is the correct answer to that question. However, he does have a vote, but he did something really stupid. And when you have a vote like this, there's ties that you're bound to in relation to your vote. You're not supposed to talk about who you're going to vote for. You may be able to disclose that after the votes are all counted, but you're also not really supposed to talk about who you are going to vote for. And he said that he would not vote for Aaron Rodgers because Aaron was, quote, a bad guy and, quote, jerk. But let me be honest. We're not voting for the nicest guy or the guy you'd most like your daughter to bring home. You're voting for the guy who's the most valuable player on the football field. We're all very well aware of what Aaron did earlier this year and his super high level honesty in regards to his COVID situation.
Chris Collinsworth.
Here's a guy that's super honest.
He was on one in this game too against the Vikings. He's talking about free Nick Mannion. It's like, shut the fuck up, Chris Collinsworth. What is that?
He's
like out there like, this Nick Mannion guy, he's gonna, and it's like, excuse me? No, he's not going to do anything. They're like showing his stats. He's like 0 for 3, and he's thrown like 6 picks and no touchdowns. Anyway.
Wait, you're talking about the Vikings quarterback.
Yeah,
correct?
Nick Mannion. Is it Nick Mannion?
No, it's not, dude. Why? How dare you besmirch the name of Nicholas? Sean Mannion. Thank you. Just run my whole namesake under the bus here. But getting back to this whole deal with Aaron, Aaron had some words in response, and I gotta say this is pretty funny. He called the guy a bum. At the end of the day, here's what I have to say. This guy made a mistake. He should not have done what he did, and Aaron probably is going to win, but I would not be surprised if we do see some, I would refer to almost like protest votes. You and I don't talk about politics on this podcast, but a lot of stuff in the sports zeitgeist is politicized, and certainly there's people.
Well, I don't think it's even the political shit as much as it is like the.
Do not stop me.
But the season.
Do not stop me. As we discuss this, there are a lot of people that have politicized this for a number of different reasons. This whole COVID aspect,
right?
And what I do want to say is that people are taking this more to their heart than they need to take it because of the fact that they have an extra skin in the game that's not related to what we're seeing on the football field. Now, the way you and I approach this, it's a sports podcast. It's a sports conversation. And I think that this guy is just maybe getting a little too personal about it as opposed to looking at it for what it is. And to not only let it decide your MVP vote, which I think is a mistake, but then to go further than that and announce that to the world, his credibility is at stake here.
Well,
so now go ahead and interrupt me,
let me announce
John.
to the world that I too would not vote for Aaron Rodgers for MVP.
Who do you think is more deserving of the award?
Nick, you know who's more deserving? The NFL's leader in solo tackles on the season, the defensive player of the year, the guy who has transformed the Green Bay Packers defense from what was once a middling average, just hope you get by defense into a physical, shape-shifting monster that it's become. Devondre Campbell.
Is he really leading the league in tackles?
Solo tackles.
Oh, solo tackles. I do want to make mention, though, Dallas has a really nice rookie linebacker that's played exceptionally well this year, and he can do everything.
Yes.
That's going to be like an analysis as we get to the playoffs. I do want to get further into that.
But the one thing he can't do is be top in solo tackles on my screen right now at this current moment. But also, like I said, I think that there is more to it than just the like vaccine stuff with Aaron Rodgers. There's also the fact that he spent the entire offseason shitting on his teammates and his organization, trying to get traded.
But did he actually say anything, or was this stuff that was prescribed to him? Because he didn't really say anything until he had his one singular press conference before the season began.
Where he shit on us for shit on the Green Bay Packers for letting go of a long snapper. And Jake Kumaro.
Well, but let's be honest. That's straw manning his entire argument.
Yeah, but he didn't
because his argument was not they got rid of Brett Good. His argument was he should have some say in some of the personnel matters. Now, agree with that or not, let's at least let's Iron Man this and attack his best argument, which is the fact that he wanted input on some of these personnel decisions.
Did he come out and denounce anything that was reported to be coming out of his camp? No.
Does he have to? And I don't know that even matters. I mean, and that has nothing to do with his ability to be the MVP of the league.
Well, I think value to an organization is definitely something that can take into account his dickery.
Well, what did he talk about? What did he talk about this week? Because if you're looking at what he's talking about this week, he's talking about the conversations that he and Brian Gutekunst have had.
I know.
How they've solidified their relationship. So there clearly was problems here, and people have talked about it in the past that Green Bay has traditionally been an organization that doesn't listen to their players.
Well,
so he wasn't wrong. Maybe he didn't handle it the best way, but he wasn't the one that was out there, busting out the Twitter. These were people that were trying to make their name. Adam Schefter comes to mind. So I don't want to sit here and hold Aaron to the flame on that. He did have a lot of stuff, and he really aired it all out right before training camp and got right to business.
I've been shitting on the general mood of Aaron Rodgers and his general off-field antics for a year and a half since he shit on.
But you really haven't.
After the NFC Championship game. Yes, I have.
Well, you jump in on these little spots where you talk all this shit, but then he plays well and you're like back to loving him, but you choose to pull it out
I want the Packers to win. Just because I want the Packers to win doesn't mean I can't think Aaron Rodgers is an asshole.
Well, I'm not saying he's not an asshole. I never said that, but is he deserving of the MVP? I believe he is.
I mean, sure. As deserving as
he's more
one gets.
I'll say this: he's more deserving than Devondre Campbell of an MVP award.
No way.
Name the last defensive player. Name the last defensive player that has won an MVP award.
Irrelevant.
No, name the last defensive player that's won an MVP award.
Did Ray Lewis ever win one?
I can tell you exactly who it was.
Lawrence
Lawrence Taylor in 1982.
Okay, that makes sense.
The defensive player does not win the MVP award. They win the defensive player of the year, the MVP of the defense. But I'm going to say this:
but they did win it when Lawrence Taylor won it, and Soup. The transformative effect he's had on this Packers defense, Nick?
You totally lost it, man. And you know I love Soup. I love Soup as much as the next
I'm just
guy.
out here asking questions, you know? I believe in MVP autonomy, Nick.
You've gone, oh, man.
I've been reading Ayn Rand.
You clearly haven't.
Devondre Campbell is John Galt, Nick.
So now that we've alienated everybody that listens to our podcast,
yeah, everybody's pissed now.
Thank you for that, by the way.
Thank you for that, because I didn't even want to talk about Aaron Rodgers.
Well, you have to talk about the guy that's going to be the MVP of the league.
That's probably true.
And not only that, but he also happens to play for the team that you claim to love, John.
I do love. I love the organization. Like I say, he's no Bart Starr, you know.
And he did have a really nice game in this one. I don't think he checked out of it too many runs.
No, it was the best I've seen him play, actually.
He still had 38 pass attempts. 29 of 38, 288 and 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
But I think the thing that needs to be attached to Aaron Rodgers, and this has been swept under the rug. Maybe Chris Collinsworth talked about it. I don't know.
I'm sure he did.
The connection that Aaron and Devonte have is special. It's so special to look at.
Yes.
And just to see, like they're talking about these little situations where they don't even make a call. They just sort of look at each other and then they know what to do. But man, I hope to God, I've been saying for a while, and kind of a Vickism, that receivers are a dime a dozen. I've been saying I hope that Devonte, gets out and maybe finds somewhere else. We can allot that money somewhere else. I don't know that we find anything as special as this tandem.
No.
I've never seen a quarterback-receiver combination quite like this. You could say Montana and Rice.
That's the comp.
You could say Young and Rice potentially as well.
Nah, it's Montana and Rice. That's the comp.
But this is crazy, right?
I've been saying it for a year now.
You could say Brady and Moss, but that was like a 1 year, 2 year deal. And man, this is incredible.
And the Moss thing is such a separate, there was nothing and has been nothing and probably will not be anything like Randy Moss at his absolute apex, where, Donte Culpepper should buy that dude dinner for the rest of his life.
Probably does.
Yeah, he better.
Hopefully he saves some of that money.
The Montana Rice comp is in my opinion, the accurate one, because this is a guy who, while having elite physical abilities and elite athleticism, it is his preparation and his absolute synchronicity with his quarterback and Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams' relationship that allows us, because Aaron Rodgers sees these throws for everybody, right? Aaron Rodgers is somebody who is preternaturally gifted at seeing the field and making a play that the defense doesn't see coming and making that throw. What is often the variable to the success or not of the Packers offense is, does he have a guy in at least a relatively close to his prime that is on the same page with him and that can see the field the way he does? Jordy was like that. Randall Cobb is obviously like that. Devonte is like that. And Devonte is far more physically gifted than the other two. And what it's really resulted in is, I think, the greatest wide receiver quarterback pairing in the entire history of the NFL this season. I think that there's not really a lot of comps, and especially the last 3 year stretch is just unbelievable.
Yeah, and actually, I'm going to propose that we get the band back together for another year. I'm going to propose that this isn't the last dance. Now, I get that their contracts are really hard to work around for both these guys.
Yep.
If we can somehow string together one more season of Aaron and Donte, that would make me really happy because what I'm seeing out on the field, and we haven't even touched on the run game. I'm so sorry, John. I know that's why you're so cranky, but we haven't even touched on the run game because this has been a special combination, and there's just nothing I've ever seen anywhere near this. Lazard started to kind of come out of his shell. He looks to be a solid number 2 as well.
We did bring up the tweet from 2012. We had Marty tweet it over to us where Ellen Lazard pondered in a moment of questioning. He had hoped that, or he wonders what it would be like to be a girl so he could see how his boobs were compared to the size of his penis.
Yeah, and these are the questions of a champion, I think.
Of a lizard avatar champion.
This might be a question that we have to pose to the Reddit universe this week. See what the real fact finders think about this. I call them truth seekers, John.
You can call them whatever you want, Nick.
And King Lazard is the king of the truth seekers. I'm so glad he's there for us. But let's get to the run game because I know you're itching to get there. I've seen how cranky this Aaron Rodgers talk has made you.
It's because it's all we ever talk about, and like Matt LaFleur, I will not be watching the interview. Let's talk about Matt LaFleur first before we get to the running game.
Oh my God, we buried the lead.
That's how we get to the running game is because we have a coach who believes in it, and Matt LaFleur. Go ahead, Nick, take it away. What is the record that he has broken?
So Matt LaFleur is the winningest coach of all time for his first 3 seasons.
Which doesn't surprise me because I said a couple weeks ago on this podcast that if he won the last 2 games, which he did, he would become the coach for the Packers with the winningest 3 seasons in franchise history, and this is no slouch franchise.
No, and at this point in time, if the season ended today, which it would in most years,
yes.
17, now we have 18 weeks, but 17 games instead of 16 games. So normally the whole season would be done at this point. And at this point, he is 37-9, possibly will be 38-9 when the season ends, possibly 37-10, who knows. But surpassing George Seifert for the most successful 3-game start for a head coaching career. And I'll say this about George Seifert.
3-season start, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we talked about the 49ers. We talked about Montana and Rice. We talked about Young and Rice. George Seifert inherited a stud team. Matt LaFleur came to a team that had missed the playoffs 2 years in a row. He's brought them to the NFC Championship every year, possibly a third one now this year. And, this is just incredible coaching by Matt LaFleur to take advantage of having a stud player like Aaron Rodgers, but also to realize that the advantages that it'll give you on a defense that can't load the box, and really taking advantage of that and choosing to focus on the run game.
For the first time in a generation, for the first time in my Packers fandom in my life, the running game has been a focus of the offense.
Now, I would maybe put a caveat on there. I would say you could make the claim that there was a couple of those Amon Green years where we started to look like a run first team, but this is something totally different because no matter who the running back is back there, we're not only utilizing the run game, but when Amon Green was here, the NFL was a very different sport. Matt LaFleur not only utilizes the run game for its opportunities to that play, but he uses it to set up the play after that and the play after that. And, man, this is a masterful coach. When we brought Matt LaFleur in, there was a lot of questions surrounding him. I've always kind of trusted the Packers front office that they know what they're doing, and we've always brought in guys that, who is this? Who is Mike McCarthy? Even this past offseason, bringing in our new defensive coordinator, Joe Barry. When Matt LaFleur came in, everybody wanted to have McDaniels. Everybody was talking about, McDaniels, that's the setup. We got McDaniels coming. And even I was sitting here clamoring for Josh McDaniels to be the new coach. And when Matt LaFleur came in, I got to tell you, I was disappointed. A lot of people were disappointed. But I had this thought deep down, as I often do, is that there's something to this guy, and we've seen it.
Well, as a man who thinks deeply and often about the Flora Kingdom.
You do?
When we hired Matt the Flower LaFleur, I was intrigued. My interest and appetite for Packers was peaked. And Nick, he has done nothing but just offer flavorful dishes on top of one another each and every season. His first year as a coach, Packers go 13-3. And what did I call that team? It was Aaron Rodgers and the swashbuckling Packers, because the advanced stats didn't say we were good. The regular stats didn't say we were good. Even our own eyes didn't say they were good sometimes. But there they were.
Often, in fact.
Balling out in the playoffs and going 13-3 to get there. And Nick running the ball and running an offense that was so different than the shotgun 4 or 5 wide offense we had become so accustomed to under Mark McCarthy. All of a sudden, play action was involved. All of a sudden, we had tight ends on the field that weren't just pass catchers. And it totally allowed for the now 3-year transformation of our defense, which started under Mike Pettin 2 years ago. But when you play an offense that is a ball control focused attack, and Aaron Rodgers even has adjusted some of his throwing profiles to this ball control style of ethos for that unit, you allow the defense to excel. You don't put the defense into spots where it's on its heels every single time. There aren't the 4 drives that you have to play defense on in the stretch of 10 minutes of game time, because we're going to take 2 or 3 minutes every time we touch the ball now.
Hopefully.
Unless Aaron throws 3 and out, which he still does. Not in this last game, but a little bit more than I'd like him to.
And I do have to say this. The one thing that drives me absolutely nuts, and we see it every game, there's always a few drives where we get to the red zone and we go empty backfield. That still drives me absolutely nuts. I'm not sure that that's on LaFleur totally. You and I have talked about that ad nauseum. Possibly on the new gunslinger, the young gunslinger. Either way, possibly on Aaron Rodgers there.
Maybe.
But I think we need to talk about this defense a little bit. You talked about the switch to Joe Barry, what that's done for our team's identity. But I think more important than anything is we've often been in a defense that we talk about, like Mike Pettin. One of his philosophies was you really sell out to stop the pass because the pass can kill you faster than the run. However, we saw games like that NFC Championship against the Niners where they just ran on us all game. We couldn't stop them. We couldn't get the ball back. And here we are this week against Minnesota, a divisional foe, playing against a running back like Dalvin Cook, one of the better running backs in the league. 9 carries, and that's low. That's super low for Dalvin Cook. Can you blame them? 13 yards, 1.4 average. That's the difference that we see in this defense now. And give Matt LaFleur all the credit in the world to have the foresight to know this is the type of defense we need here, and to really use that to his advantage, because I'm not saying that the Vikings are a powerhouse and they were without their starting quarterback and a variety of things like that. However, we did exactly what we needed to do to win the game, and against some other talent that's pretty striking elsewhere as well.
Nick, the defense for this team, and it really starts with your guy, Devondre Campbell, Mr. Soup himself, not Greek alphabet soup.
No relation that we're aware of.
He has really come in and filled in a void in the defense that you and I have been talking about for 2 years, whether it was Christian Kirksey last year or the year before. We don't even want to bring up the Blake Martinez era, but still. He now has a true middle linebacker, a true Mike in there, dictating the defensive coverages, communicating to the defensive line, pushing the corners around into the spots that they need to be in. Rasul Douglas has been great. Darnell Savage has been great. Kevin Kiggs played well in spot times. Eric Stokes has been better than we all could have thought. Kenny Clark's, I mean, he should be an all-pro. But Devondre Campbell, to me, a guy who didn't make the Pro Bowl, to me, has been the real difference between last year and the year before's defense, which hovered in the middle of the pack, erring towards better than average, to now a team that is firmly in the top 10 and a physical problem for opposing offenses every single week. I just cannot say enough about what Devondre Campbell has brought to this team. And the physical nature with which he plays really reminds me of my three guys at the top, A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones, Patrick Taylor, and the rushing attack we displayed yet again in Minnesota, against Minnesota this last week. We have the ability to dominate physically both sides of the ball. The Packers haven't been able to say that since the 60s, and that's why, to wrap it all together, I compared Matt LaFleur to Vince Lombardi and Curly Lambeau just last week.
You know, we are for the W, but L's have been really good for the Green Bay Packers as it relates to head coaching hires.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's a good situation. And
Best eyebrows, Curly Lambeau, Vince Lombardi, Matt LaFleur, go.
The one that has a Facebook page, Matt LaFleur, of course.
Vince Lombardi's were wild, but tantalizing.
He was wild and untamed, not only as a man, but also as a brow.
As a brow. He had a real untamed brow to him.
But to get back to some of these defensive players you're talking about, I do want to get into our Pro Football Focus advanced statistics, John. The reason why we do this pod each and every week, brother, we get into this square circle and we talk Packers, Brewers, Bucks, and Badgers.
We sure do, Nick.
And I do want to talk about a couple guys. We talk about Devondre. We love Devondre on this podcast.
Number one, best linebacker in football, in my opinion.
And they have him currently ranked second, unfortunately.
Fuck off.
Yeah, big mistake. I will say this, though, you know, when I'm talking about the linebacker in Dallas who shall remain nameless, feel free to look him up if you please. That guy is a Swiss Army knife. He plays a lot of positions. I believe, and I don't know this offhand, my guess would be he's the first ranked linebacker. He's really just jumped on the scene. But he also plays edge rusher. He plays a variety of positions. We actually have good edge rushers already. Rashawn Gary is our highest rated defensive player, even higher rated than Soup himself, 8th overall amongst edge rushers. Just behind him, Preston Smith is 17th overall by NFL edge rushing standards. And
are you talking about Micah Parsons? Is that the Dallas guy you're bringing
Micah
up?
Parsons.
Okay.
Yeah. Of course, it's Micah Parsons. He's been having a phenomenal year and getting to watch him this past
I just
weekend.
wanted to make sure.
Yeah, getting to watch him this past weekend in that Cardinals game. He's a special player.
Dallas worries me, dude. Dallas worries me.
Brett Coleman, another YouTuber that I'm a big fan of, did a really nice profile on Micah Parsons and all the different ways they utilize him. I highly recommend that if you're on the YouTube, like we are now, that you would go and check that out. But besides that being said, Micah Parsons is having a great year.
Dallas worries me.
Dallas worries me. And I'll tell you this, not only does Dallas worry me, another team from the East that really worries me, and I was talking to my mother about this today because she lives in Philadelphia. The Eagles commit to the run game, and they kind of worry me too. Any team that will commit to the run does worry me, especially coming into Lambeau.
Absolutely.
So we'll have plenty to talk about there as we go, but we should be getting Zadarius back, it's looking like. We've got guys like Jair starting to practice.
Say it.
On the offensive side of the ball,
say it.
We've got guys like Devonte Adams, 1st overall in Pro Football Focus. We've got guys like Aaron Rodgers, 4th overall amongst quarterbacks on Pro Football Focus.
Your restraint is admirable.
A.J. Dillon has moved up to 2nd. Aaron Jones is 6th. Mercedes Lewis having a career year at the bright age of 572. He's the 6th overall tight end. There's not a lot of offensive linemen in the top part of our rankings right now, John.
But who would be there and who's, just say it.
Practicing this week. It was the man that you are so excited about, John. You've been wanting to hear me exclaim his name.
For the 18th week out of 17 weeks.
Of course, you must mean Josh Myers. Josh Myers is back in practice this week.
Okay.
But now to really seal it in, David Bakhtiari. And I'm going to say this, John. This is the week. I'm looking at you as I break the fourth wall.
For new listeners, Nick has been predicting David Bakhtiari is going to come back every week. And to your credit, Nick, the Packers have been putting out information basically saying that he's going to be coming back multiple weeks throughout the season. But folks at home, I would take it with a giant spoonful of salt.
Nah, this is the week you can trust me. we'll see some real minutes out of I almost said Devondre Campbell, which we will, but David Bakhtiari as well.
Well, it'd be nice to see Jair back for sure.
Yeah.
And Josh Myers, like you said.
Yeah, and I don't know if we'll see these guys playing a full game. I highly doubt we'll see anybody play a full game this week. I think it's going to be almost like a preseason game of years past where our starters will come out. I mean, it's the Lions. Hopefully, they're going to try to punch us in the mouth. They really are. Dan Campbell has that team ready to play, even though they suck. It's players, not plays, and he's got his players fired up every week. But yeah, I think you can. Actually, I'm going to say this. I'll put the Nickstradamus guarantee.
No, Nick, don't do it to yourself.
Take it to the bank. This is the week that we see a meaningful snap for David Bakhtiari.
Listeners, it's likely not going to happen.
Matt LaFleur has already stated that he would like to see David Bakhtiari get some meaningful time prior to the playoffs.
Why did he... Mr. LaFleur, the flower, please stop fucking with Nick like this.
No, why are you such a pessimist? I'm going to start.
I just think it's I think it's a funny thing, and as it's extended longer and longer, like the first 2 or 3 times, I just didn't say anything. I didn't even mention that we had predicted that, but by the 4th time, it was like, Bach's coming back. And I was like, I don't know about that, Nick. And then he went down with the meniscus or what, but.
I'm going to start shitting all over your Bucks optimism every week now. This
Donte,
is how we're playing
you can shit on Donte. My Donte take.
Donte is the David Bakhtiari of the Bucks.
He is. That is an incredibly accurate statement.
Apt, John.
Apt. APT, baby. Apt.
So before we get too far out here, I'm really excited about this week's game, even though we are playing the Lions.
Yeah, starters versus non-starters I have written down right here.
Okay, and one thing I do want to make mention of, we need to say goodbye to your boy. No longer the 82 that's on our roster. We have a new 82. David Moore had 3 really nice punt returns this week. We've got our new punt returner in David Moore, and that's been a nice improvement.
With half of our special teams unit out due to COVID, the increase in
but then half came back.
Productivity was eye-opening. That we were just basically throwing guys out there who didn't know what they were doing, and they were doing significantly better than the dudes who we practice with every week.
But I want to say that's not exactly the case, because as I said a few weeks ago, as we get to more meaningful games, we're going to see guys that are bottom tier roster guys be moved out of those positions for players that are more capable. For example, we saw AJ Dillon on the hands team a couple weeks ago.
Yep.
We've seen Chandon Sullivan do some returning. So really what we're seeing is guys that are more capable athletes playing in those roles. And maybe that's a blessing in disguise, or maybe we intend to keep, Tyler Lancaster, and other Tylers, Ty Summers, Tyler Davis. Maybe we're intending to keep them off of the special teams. We should bring Tyler Irvin back. I just want to say he's still out there, free agent, swerve.
We could have used him, Nick. We could have used him.
And Borky didn't have a really great punting game this week either. He had one.
Well, he had that awful punt. His
punt.
first real awful punt of the season, when it was 25. It was a 25-yard punt. I think it was his first one of the game.
Yeah. So Borky's on notice there. He's dropped to 16th among active punters according to Pro Football Focus.
That's absurd.
Is the weather affecting his game? Find out next week. And the week after that, we'll be having a vacation and we'll find out more.
Absolutely. Nick, so Matt LaFleur said that the starters are going to play this upcoming week, week 18, the final week before the playoffs. We have clinched the number 1 seed and the bye week in the NFC. Do you have any thoughts on him playing the starters versus not? I'm sure it'll be limited in some capacity, you'd imagine.
I think it's a good move, and here's the reason why. We've talked about years past, the season we went 15-1, I believe it was the 2011-2012 season, a season where I actually was in person for the one loss to Kansas City at Arrowhead. Disappointing year, and that last game of that year, we were actually playing the same Detroit Lions team, very different lineup. We had a very special offensive coordinator game caller for that game, and that was Aaron Rodgers. Now, if you were...
Was that the Matt Flynn game?
I was going to say, if you were to ask anybody who's the top Packers quarterback single game record holder, I believe it was not only touchdown passes, but also passing yards. It was Matt Flynn, and Aaron Rodgers was calling all the plays. So we watched that game. But what did we see the following week when we got to the playoffs? we saw a team that was actually it was 2 weeks because we had the bye. We saw a flat team, came out, lost to the Giants very unceremoniously. A Giants team that went on to win the Super Bowl, I will say that.
Yeah, but still, it was Eli Manning. We lost Eli
and we
Manning.
were head and shoulders above a lot of teams there. We also didn't run the ball enough, so there's a lot to be said there. But
Nick,
I think there's something to be said for giving the starters meaningful snaps, meaningful playing time. And the Detroit Lions, as I stated earlier, they're not going to come out and be any slouches. They're not going to just sit down. They're going to be ready to pop us in the mouth. And I think the plan is test that first wave, so to speak. And then, let's see what Jordan Love can do, and let's see what our reserves can do.
The Lions are often a team that I am very excited to see on the schedule. And this week is no exception because, like you said, I think the Lions are going to come out. They've rallied to not have the worst record in football. They're 2-13-1. But they have had a lot of close losses, actually. And you could tell that the pride of that team over the last, they've been eliminated.
Was that a pun intended?
Well, they've been eliminated for like 7 weeks or whatever. So, to win a couple of those games when you've already been eliminated for literally like 4 months shows that Dan Campbell and that team is not going to lie down. And also an opportunity to have Aaron Rodgers, A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams, and some of our, defensive studs catch some snaps in a game that doesn't mean as much, so we can kind of grow some chemistry and, really hone our tendencies. We will have a week off, obviously, for the bye week in the playoffs. That's more than enough time for everybody to rest up 2 weeks. It'd be really encouraging to see Jair and Bach back, Josh Myers as well. Those three, especially to me, more so than Zaire.
Jair or Za'Darius?
Za'Darius, excuse me. More so than really anybody else. Those three, to me, would be encouraging to see back because I don't want them to come back against, whether it's the Cowboys or the Bucks or the Rams, whoever we end up playing in that second round game. That team is going to come in rolling. It's always hard to withstand the victory after the bye week in the playoffs. The really great teams do it, but if you're not a really great team and you're a 1 seed or previously a 1 or 2 seed, I kind of always picked against you because generally speaking, football is a bit of a rhythm sport. Now, as we talked about, Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams need no preparation to get their rhythm going. So that gives us a chance in every game. But for these defensive guys, for that offensive line, and especially for A.J. Dillon's badass overalls and nothing else. I saw a tweet, the Wisconsin urge to wear this outfit is unlimited. Like there is no one in the state who hasn't just thrown on some overalls and nothing else and thought, she's going to like that,
Except for me, I guess. I don't know.
Maybe someday, Nick.
Someday I'll reach those heights. And, talking about the playoffs, every team in the NFC does frighten me on some level. I'm not going to
spooky times in the NFC.
I'm not going to lie. Like we talked about Dallas coming off a pretty rough loss to the Cardinals, a team we've already beat. But the Cardinals, right now, if the playoffs were to begin today, playoffs. We know Philadelphia's in. We knocked off the Vikings. I believe there's a question I think the question is if San Francisco is going to be in there or not. It appears to me Dallas, the Tampa Bay, the Rams, and the Cardinals have all locked up in addition to Philadelphia. So I think it's a question of San Francisco or New Orleans. All those teams scare me. All those teams can sustain the run game. All those teams have pretty decent defenses. I think this is going to be a very competitive NFC and very similar to what they say about the city of New York. If we can make it here, we can make it anywhere. Hopefully, as Green Bay looks into this playoff, we can continue to build upon, as McCarthy used to say, stacking success and developing a team identity that's going to sustain us through the rest of the playoffs because that sitting out a game and taking a bunch of weeks off doesn't cut it. So I really like what LaFleur's doing here, getting us prepped.
LaFleur has made the right call almost every step of the way throughout his 3-year record-breaking time here as the head coach of the Green Bay Football Acme Packers. So I trust LaFleur. I trust this defense to come in prepared. The reason I am scared of all those teams that you mentioned is exactly the same reason I'm scared every single year when the Packers go into the playoffs, and that is that we are going to abandon the run, and we are not going to control the line of scrimmage, and we are not going to control the tempo of the game. And when we come out doing that to start a game, we have a tendency to get so far behind that we can't do anything about it by the end. If we lose in the playoffs this year, we will have lost to a worse team than us. I think that's pretty safe to say. And B, this is my John Stradamus prediction that I saw in a fever dream when I had COVID, that the Packers will not lose a game that we run the ball more than 25 times in the playoffs. If we lose, I think it will come on a game that we run the ball less than 20 times, because that's how we've gone out each of the last 2 years.
Seems fair to me. Any predictions on this Lions game before we close this episode out?
I'm going to say we crush them, and I'm going to say Jordan Love comes out of his shell a bit, has over 200 yards throwing and 2 touchdowns, and the Packers win 45-13.
All right. Yeah, your thoughts are that Love will find a way. I'm going to say that Detroit's going to come out ready to battle. I think it's going to be a slower start than we would like. I'm going to say a final score of 17-34 in favor of our Green Bay Packers.
How long we've come since the last time these two teams squared off.
Oh, yes, we've come a long way, John. And we've come a long way since we've seen the Saints. Hopefully, if we see them in the playoffs, we have a much better showing against them.
Can't have a worse one.
And I hope that everyone's enjoying the showing of this podcast, which we are now going to be available on YouTube and eventually all sorts of different places. So don't break that fourth wall, John. Always a pleasure, man.
Thank you to all of our audio listeners. Thank you to our video viewers. Thank you to everybody who supports this podcast. And thank you to everybody who will someday.
We appreciate you, and we'll see you next week.
You got it.
For the spell like words.
Podcast.